And good day, I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time as we help you live God's Word in today's world. We thank you for tuning in. Here's our deal. We talk about anything and everything because if God expects you to live through it, He has directed you how to do it somewhere in His Word. So as we address the topics of the day and all of those issues in the headlines, we will remind you biblically, what is the mindset that we should have? How should we be thinking through these issues? How should we be conducting ourselves? And of course, as we know, in America, things are just so at unrest. We are dealing with issues we don't think we've dealt with before, and yet I would tell you this nation was at unrest before we were a nation, to make the decision to become independent. I would guess there was great turmoil and unrest. And God saw us through. And I think when we're always faithful to pray to Him, to submit to His ways, to work in love, not our own motivation, I think we'll find He will see us through. Right now today, I'm very pleased to tell you we are going to have a guest by the name of Philp Haney. If you have not heard that name, let me assure you, you're going to. I believe that name will become more and more every day and well known. And I'm thankful, as we're talking about Christianity and how we behave and how we live in today's world, I'm thankful that someone in a place of position, in a place of power, but also in a place where they could have lost everything by speaking up, chose to still speak up. Philp Haney was with the Department of Homeland Security, and if you do a search for his name, what pops up on the internet is whistleblower. That's what pops up most often. And in talking to him about doing this interview and doing some preparation work, I watched the video called Willful Blindness, where Senator Cruz is questioning Jay Johnson from the Homeland Security Department. And I'll tell you, it is so frustrating to watch that video. And at the same time, let me just tell you how pleased I am. Senator Cruz is still in the Senate and still questioning folks and asking these very tough questions, as he should be. Let's go right to our guest, Phil Haney. Thank you for joining us today.
Very glad. You're certainly welcome. I'm very glad to be here.
So I'll tell our folks, you are on the road while we're talking, so hopefully we'll be able to get along just fine without any issue. And I'm going to say to my producer, I've already forgotten to set my clock, so I'm behind. You keep me, I'll watch for your flag, and you keep me on target here. For our listeners, those of you who watch, you can join us at webcastonelive.com on Fridays, usually at 10. Only these shows are being pre-taped. I apologize for that, but I am with the RNC convention in Cleveland these 2 weeks. And so you can always also catch us at 99.3 FM in Central Iowa on the Truth Network. So Phil Haney, you were with the Department of Homeland Security. You weren't a newbie. You were there from the very beginning.
That's correct. I was a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection, which was created in March of 2003 as a standalone agency, and it was founded to protect our country from the threat of terrorism. Very, very simple mandate.
You took an oath of office when you went into that position?
That's correct. I did.
Was it different than the oath that the president or a military takes?
No, not a bit different. To protect our country from threat, both foreign and domestic, and protect the U.S. Constitution. That's the vow.
And it would be the same oath that Secretary of State Hillary Clinton might have taken on several different occasions.
Yes, except for maybe possibly small differences in wording. Overall, it's absolutely the same. So we all take the same vow.
She would have taken that vow to protect the Constitution from enemies outside and within. She would have taken that vow as a senator. She would have taken that vow as Secretary of State as well.
That's correct, yes.
And so for our listeners out there, I can't say when we'll air this show, which date, but you know and I know she has now been what we say the Comey with the FBI said he finds nothing to indict her. And I know that's not the purpose of our conversation today, Phil, but we just talked about the oath. how can that possibly be when everything that's been admitted took place?
Well, over and above the facts of the case, and whether you agree with the assessment of Director Comey or not, there's something more fundamental about it. And that is that if you yourself take the vow, and there's any hint of abrogation of responsibility regarding that vow, you yourself, if you're a person of integrity, you just should honorably withdraw. I realize I made a mistake. I didn't make the right choices. I'm going to withdraw myself from the political process and let someone else come in and take this job. You know, that would have been an ethical, honorable thing. People would have actually respected her for doing it. But these people seem to be bound and determined that they're going to forge ahead no matter what in violations of integrity, let alone law or constitutional principles they might commit.
You raise an excellent point. Had she withdrawn herself, the supporters she had, I think, would have rallied around her and very much respected her and possibly even brought her in at a later date. But by continuing to insert herself and refuse to even admit any wrongdoing, just with such disdain for the process, even the willful blindness, if we're jumping back to what you and I are going to talk about, the video that I watched with Senators Ted Cruz questioning Jay Johnson from the Department of Homeland Security, and again, different issue, but the same attitude, this disdain, this sarcasm, this disrespect of these people to the American people. This isn't just to a senator who's on the opposite party. This is to the American people and the protection of our Constitution.
Well, not only is it to a senator of the opposite party, that's true, but there's something even more fundamental about it. If there's any such thing as an ordinary hearing, which I'm not sure there is, nonetheless, this is a Senate Oversight Committee hearing. This is a whole other dimension more important. This is the committee that has oversight of the Department of Homeland Security. He's sitting there with contempt and arrogance, disdain, and disrespect for the committee members, though he may not agree with them politically per se, have the responsibility of overseeing his agency. That's a whole other magnitude of contempt that he's displaying.
Does the Senate... Go ahead.
In addition to his dismissive attitude, claims that he did not know me, assertions that he didn't even take time to look into it, and besides that, it didn't really matter because they're just labels anyway. All of those are incredibly, I can't even find the word at the moment, astonishing displays of hubris and abrogation of responsibility as a leader of a major government agency.
Does it take the Senate? We have supposedly a Republican majority, but can that majority vote to remove him, or would it take a supermajority to remove him?
I haven't looked into it, honestly, because things are moving so fast as they are. I'm doing good just to keep up with them. It's a pretty spectacular thing to be a part of history, and I mean it so literally. Ted Cruz was asking Jay Johnson, my former boss, specifically about claims that I made. And I can tell you, even as a Christian, a believer, to be involved in that process, the sense of it, of history, and the sense of eternity, as though the angels themselves are watching this, is just like seeing the chariots of fire around the city when Elisha and Gehazi were there. I mean, this was a spectacular event. Satisfying in a way, I have to be honest with you, because he's demonstrated to the American public exactly the thing I had been going through for about 12 years. I got exactly the same kind of response over and over and over again from different individuals in management throughout the agency during the time that I tried to bring my concerns up the chain of command. So it wasn't surprising, but it was satisfying in a way that finally the American public are going to see what it was like going through this event for 12 years straight.
I can't imagine. All right, so take our viewers and our listeners through what you did encounter so that they can see the background and know the story as well.
Well, I was investigated 9 times during the course of my career. Not for insubordination or moral failing or refusal to disobey an order, nothing ordinary like that. What I was investigated for was putting information into our law enforcement system that essentially contradicted the narrative of the administration. In other words, I was putting facts-based law enforcement information, we call it derogatory information, into the system that the administration was forced to make a choice about. They could either act on it from a law enforcement orientation and enforce immigration law, for example, or they could ignore it. That would be the first level of response. That's passive. If you just ignore something, that's a passive response. The next step was to remove it. That's not passive. That's deliberate and intentional. But they went even one step further. They not only removed it, they turned around and investigated me for putting it in the system in the first place. That's a second level of moral culpability because they knew full well what they were doing. And they weren't satisfied with just destroying the information. They tried to destroy me as well.
And this is 9 times with your career at Homeland Security.
Yes. While I was simultaneously, remarkably enough, awarded or commended the same number of times, once for exactly the same case. I received the largest cash award I ever was given during the course of my career for the same case that I was investigated for putting the information into the system at the same time. That's how disconnected this administration is. They actually awarded me and investigated me for the same case.
The same administration awarded you and investigated you for the exact same actions on the same case.
That's right. Exactly the same case.
What organization, what part of branch, who rewarded you?
My agency, Customs and Border Protection.
Okay.
It's one of 22 agencies under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security.
And when would that have been? What year? I'm curious because I'm just curious.
2012.
2012. So at that point, Obama had not overtaken them to the point where they still could act justly, is what I'm getting at.
Well, yeah, there was a collision going on, if you will. It's like the collision of these pictures you see from the Hubble telescope of 2 galaxies colliding. We were in the process of colliding at that time, and the response policy was not unified yet. As time went on, it got more and more unified to the point where when I finished up my career, the last 11 months, they took my gun, they cut off all access to the systems, they revoked my secret clearance, and they sequestered me in literally a little room, a little cubicle, for the last 11 months with no assigned duties whatsoever, while I waited for the outcome, the results of 3 simultaneous investigations: Department of Justice, CBP Internal Affairs, and the Inspector General for the Department of Homeland Security. All 3 were investigating me at the same time.
And they didn't find you guilty of anything?
No, I was exonerated, or the cases were dropped or dismissed, and I actually retired honorably. July 31st, 2015, I got my badge and my credentials stamped in gold embossed lettering, retired.
Okay, I want to come back. This is amazing to me. I don't know what it must feel like, one, the areas that you deal with, who you know how to trust or who you don't know who to trust, not only because our listeners may not know it yet, but you also were counterterrorism. So you interviewed, or what we call interrogated, people who may have been involved in terrorism. So one, there's the risk. But then two, if you've ever been in an organization, folks, whether oftentimes we think of it in government and political, but you realize everyone in the organization may not be headed the same direction you are. They may not be there with the same motives or purity that you are intending. Not that either of us think we're pure. We've got to come back. I hear the music. We'll be right back after these messages. I want you to stay tuned. Tamara Scott with Truth for Our Time, and Phil Haney. He has a new book out called See Something, Say Nothing. And we'll be right back after these messages.
Credit cards are like grandkids. They love you, sometimes get out of control, and it's fun to get a new one. Who can stop them from piling on?
Hi, I'm Tom Coates with Consumer Credit of Des Moines. At the end of the day, you can return the grandkids, but you're stuck paying off bad credit card debt. We'll help you put the fun back into using credit cards responsibly. Right, kids?
Yeah!
If you need help getting credit cards off your back, call Consumer Credit of Des Moines.
Hi, my name is David Burrier, your Hope Coach. I host a live weekly talk show called I've Been There every Thursday afternoon at 5:30, right here on webcast1live.com, and on my weekly radio program Saturday mornings at 10 on Truth Network 99.3 FM. I interview common everyday people who have survived incredible life challenges and who testify to God's faithfulness in the midst of their storms. So join me as we bring a message of hope and encouragement. Everybody needs hope. I know, because I've been there.
Hey everybody, I brought Northern Lights Pizza! And it's got Graziano sausage!
Rockton Prevention is celebrating 25 years of creating a caring community. We want to say thank you to the tens of thousands of Rock High School mentors that have carried our message of health, love, and encouragement to over 1.5 million children, teachers, and parents. Our mentors teach children methods and skills to prevent bullying and drug use. Thank you to all the school administrators, teachers, and counselors for their opportunity to serve you. Rock on, fair citizens. Rock on. This is Pat McManus for Rock and Prevention, the Richard O. Jacobson Foundation, and this station.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live. From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And you're listening to Truth for Our Time. I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for staying with us. Our guest today, Philp, Philip, Haney, Haney. Do a search on Philip Haney, DHS, whistleblower, Department of Homeland Security. He was there from the beginning. You also may want to look at the video with Senator Ted Cruz, who we're very thankful was there at this time and able to question the senator, able to question the director of Homeland Security, whose attitude you will find, I think, most infuriating. And then we'll go ahead and continue some of this discussion. But I'm talking with Philip himself. Philip, one, I just want to thank you for your courage, because as I said, when you've been in an organization and you feel like not everybody is there with you on the same page, it is rather frightening, rather amazing, and you don't know who to trust. I can't imagine what position you were in as to who you knew who to trust or who you didn't trust. But
Well, there's 2 points there I'd like to address. And the first one is the genius of our founding fathers. They included threats both foreign and domestic. So they were not naive about the potential of threat arising right from within the homeland. They recognized it, and it's part of our vow. I suspect that most people that do take the vow don't actually consider the possibility that the threat can come from within, but it can and it does. The other one is that throughout this whole long process of trauma and tribulation and trials and tears, because it did end in triumph, there was always at least one person along the way who was standing with me. I was never, from a human perspective, never alone. There was always at least one person. And of course, being a believer, I never felt alone anyway, because I have the confidence that the Lord will stand by those who stand by Him, as He has shown over and over again throughout history. And that was a deep and abiding sense of comfort and strength, and even, you might say, boldness. The other part of it is that I had to be willing to sacrifice everything. In other words, I couldn't be afraid of loss of job or other things in my life, and survive the process. I had to put that aside, just like He talks about in the Bible, giving up everything to gain everything, laying down your life to keep your life, and so on. Those paradoxes to me are very real, because I saw them played out in the story that you will find in the book, See Something, Say Nothing.
Where can folks find this book, Say Something, See Nothing?
Well, it's see something, say nothing, but
did I say it backwards? Say it again.
Happens a lot. See something, say nothing.
That's right.
It's a play on words of the motto from DHS, if you see something, say something.
You're right.
Well, essentially, as we saw with Jay Johnson last week, it doesn't always work. And they don't reward you if you do see something. They often go after you instead. But where you can find it, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, ChristianBooks.com, WorldNet Daily, and some of the places, and you can find it. By the way, the first edition sold out in 3 weeks. It was actually released May 24th, and it sold out in 3 weeks. They're in second printing now. That's why you will see there's a delay in the delivery, and they're also going to fire up the third edition right as soon as they get done with the second edition. But you can get it on Kindle. It's on Kindle, at least on Amazon and probably on Barnes & Noble. But if you want an actual book, then it'll be a little bit longer, and they'll be available again.
See something, say nothing. Philp, Haney. My husband will love that it's on Kindle. I will be the frustrated one waiting for it in print because I like to read them and mark them up as I go. The title, the very title, and I want you to direct this interview as well because I don't want to miss one nugget of what you think is important for our viewers. But the title, see something, say nothing. We've seen you felt it in your job as your position where you were investigated. Fortunate that you weren't reprimanded or disciplined or even removed from post yourself, as some in the military have been. But for civilians, we saw this in San Bernardino. We saw it in Orlando. And I've had other guests say we should have had warning with Fort Hood and others. People are afraid to say something because we feel like it just puts us on the watch list with an administration that's going to protect Islam and Muslims and does not protect First Amendment or Christians.
Well, one of the perfect examples of what you just said is the statements that were made by the neighbors of Syed Farouk, the man who killed the people in San Bernardino. They said, we saw something going on, but we were afraid to say anything, because we did not want to be labeled as Islamophobes or racists. And again, in the Chattanooga shooting, now we're finding out that Abdul Aziz was actually known and was recognized by his own family and neighbors that he was radicalizing. He was coming to that threshold point. Same thing with Omar Mateen, the Orlando shooter. The signs were there. It's just that people were afraid to say so. And there's something else that's actually more ominous. People knew and deliberately didn't say anything within the Muslim community, which is a whole other big issue, but it's a reality that we have to face. They don't consider these people to be terrorists, necessarily. And that's something that has to do with Sharia law. They believe that the Muslim community should be governed by the principles of Sharia law, no man-made system, including the U.S. Constitution, or state and federal civil law. So in a sense, they're for what's going on, because ultimately, if its design is to implement Sharia law, then they are going to stand behind it. And that's why they often don't say something.
So let's clarify. Those in the Muslim community may see what we now know is terroristic behavior, but they won't say anything because in their community with Sharia law, that behavior is acceptable.
Yes, the majority of Muslims worldwide do not consider ISIS, for example, or Hamas, or Hezbollah, or even Boko Haram, or any one of a number of other terrorist groups, like the one that did the murders at the restaurant in Dhaka, Bangladesh. The people in the country didn't see them as terrorists. And their concerns about their activities were diminished, especially when they focused their guns at non-believers, non-Muslims, which was the case in Dhaka, Bangladesh, or even in Orlando, or for that matter in San Bernardino. It's a really difficult, abstract concept to discuss, but you have to recognize the power and the influence of Sharia law global Islamic community. It predominates, just like gravity is the predominant force in our solar system. and keeps all the planets orbiting, Sharia law is the predominant force within the Islamic world, and everything ultimately has to be judged by that standard of Sharia law.
I want to touch on the term radical Islam, too. We see them defined as extremists or Islamic extremists. Let's be clear about this. If anything, they're devout Muslims who have read the Quran. Would that be accurate?
Sure.
It's not
That's correct.
It's not that they're on the fringe as not complying with the faith. They have read the faith, and they are actually fulfilling what they've read in the Quran.
What we're actually talking about here is not strategy. This question that you brought up is an important one, but it doesn't actually have anything to do with the strategy of the global Islamic movement, which is simple implementation of Sharia law so that the entire world is governed by that form of law. What we're talking about now is tactics, how to do it. And that's where the complexity is, I call it kaleidoscopic. There is a spectrum, a kaleidoscope of tactics that are available to the Muslim community worldwide to do their part to implement Sharia law. That spectrum goes from simple conversation, it's called dawah, which means persuasion or invitation to become a Muslim, all the way through a long spectrum of other options, up to and including violence. And so what you're seeing is a kaleidoscope, a morphing from one to the next at any given time in any particular place in the world. That's why we've seen 28,600 plus jihad attacks around the world since 9/11.
Repeat
Those are
that.
all
Repeat that number.
28,600 and something jihad attacks, basically once an hour, literally, from the 9/11 till this very day, have occurred somewhere in the world. Those are all tactical operations. They're all designed, from their perspective, to implement Sharia law, to promote it. The reasons that they give always come back to that. If you listen to what they said about the attacks a few days ago in Saudi Arabia against Riyadh, Mecca, and Medina, it was because the Saudi government is not Sharia compliant enough. If you listen to ISIS, they say it. They want to implement Sharia law. If you listen to the Muslim Brotherhood globally, they also say, our goal is to implement Sharia law. It's the same everywhere.
And we've seen the videos, even in America, when people say to the Muslims in the communities, do you think Sharia law should be in place? Many of them say yes.
Mm-hmm. Another counterintuitive component of this whole dynamic of the discussion, it has to be included like potatoes in the soup, is the fact that when people come here from other foreign countries that have been under some degree of Sharia law, they come to a new place that's confusing and even threatening to them. The options of freedom and liberty that we offer here are foreign to them. So what they end up doing is when they come to America, they end up, it's kind of counterintuitive, clinging even closer to Sharia law, because it's the only thing that provides order and stability in the chaotic world that they're coming to. And that is why you see more and more women, for example, in the Islamic community in America wearing the hijab. It's a signal of the implementation of Sharia law. It's not just about women being modest, which no rational person would complain about. It's also about the implementation of Sharia law, in particular in the area of civil law, meaning remarriage, divorce, inheritance, those kind of things, buying of property and conducting business. 80% of Sharia law has to do with civil law, and one component is, our appearance in public and our behavior in public. That is why women are covering more and more in the United States, because the influence of Sharia law is making itself felt right here in America.
All right. The hearing that I saw just recently with Cruz and Jay Johnson, some of the issues that you brought up What was it that they did not want in the record? What you talk about purges. What did they not want? What are they hiding from us that they know?
Two things mainly. They said that they did not want any information in the system that links Islam with terrorism. That's A. And B, they said that it was discriminating or potentially violating the civil rights of individuals seeking to come to America if we simply assumed that their membership or their affiliation with a particular Islamic group, in my case...
Hang on, we've got to go to a break. We'll be right back after these messages. Stay tuned. I'm talking with Phil Haney from See Something, Say Nothing.
Makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
Northern Lights Pizza. I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Homs.
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Everything that we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed rate or it's free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed rate or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I love the team. I love the people that I work with.
We have fun, but we work hard.
I call them my ambassadors of legendary service. If you could just envision what that is, that's who we're sending to your home.
They literally will call in, pick up the phone and call and say, hey, I want to talk to your manager. And I get on the phone, they're like, that technician that was at my house was the greatest technician ever. That's cool to me.
We want to brighten people's days.
Every person that we have going into the house has gone through an extensive background check.
Drug testing, we have a very thorough interview process that 1 out of 140 people make it through.
If we promise you something, that's what you're going to get, no matter what.
We're here when you need us to protect the safety and comfort of your family.
If you're not happy, we're going to make it right.
If we're willing to put 100% money-back guarantee on what we do, what type of work do you think we do?
Give us a call. We're there for you 24/7, 365 days a year.
Enough said.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
And thanks for staying with us. I am Tamara Scott. You're listening to Truth for Our Time, helping you live God's Word in today's world when the headlines hit home. And boy, they are hitting home more than ever right now. So much happening in our communities. I am talking with Philp Haney. The book is called See Something, Say Nothing. You can find it on any of the outlets, Amazon, WorldNet Daily, Barnes & Noble. It is in delay right now because the first print went so quickly. The second print, I think he said, was, Phil, correct me, but we're already coming out with a third edition because of the demand?
The second edition is going to be available around the 14th, they say, and they're already talking, setting up for the third. Yep.
I thank you for writing this book. There is a hunger for truth. There is a hunger for knowledge. You see it in the disapproval ratings of our candidates. It wouldn't matter who ran right now. People don't trust the political class in D.C. They don't trust the agencies like we used to. We don't trust the media like we once thought we could. And I would say to you, it's because we've put God out of so many of those organizations and those branches that this is what happens. Our founding fathers knew it. This is why they had so many checks and balances in place, because man left to himself will often do the selfish or protective thing. It will give in. And so thankful that we have one who didn't. We have one who stood strong and has written about it. And this is the demand I think we're seeing for see something, say nothing, Philp Haney. Now, I apologize. We had to go to a quick break there, and you had just given us 2 points. One was that they wanted you to remove anything that Islam had to do with terrorism. And the second one was, give us that one again.
It was a potential violation of the civil rights and civil liberties of Muslim individuals who were linked to Muslim organizations. In other words, as per the FBI Touchstone document, that's what it's called, Touchstone document, published 2012, on guidelines, they say in the 3-page document, paragraph 1, that just because an individual is affiliated with a known organization, terrorist organization, you can't automatically assume that they're terrorists themselves. So there you have this law enforcement disconnect. That what you see standing right in front of you, you're not allowed to act on it, because if you do, you'll jeopardize your career and be accused of violating someone's civil rights and civil liberties. Well, that wasn't just in the FBI. It was also in my agency, CBP. And in fact, the Civil Rights and Civil Liberties Division of CBP is essentially responsible for engendering and formulating these policies that we see around us now so commonly. It's called countering violent extremism. And they base it on a civil rights, civil liberties priority instead of law enforcement. We have to be ultra concerned about violating somebody's civil rights and civil liberties, which we should be, but not to the exclusion of our own safety. And when people, individuals, are affiliated with known terrorist organizations, or even marginally possible, as law enforcement officers, that's our job. The irony of it is that really American people would really never know who I was, or people like me, because we were doing our job and nothing would happen. And that's the way it's supposed to be. We're not supposed to have to worry about whether our national security officers are doing their job. We're just supposed to, as Americans, assume that they are. And it's only when we're not able to do it that we discover there's a problem, like what happened in Boston, what happened in Fort Hood, Chattanooga,
Orlando and San Bernardino.
Orlando, yes. Every single one of those cases had a multitude of indicators that any reasonably qualified law enforcement officer would have been able to take steps and address and very plausibly prevent them. And that's another thing I talk about in detail in the book. I don't just make claims and statements. I always back up everything I say. And that's the main reason why I survived the experience, and that's the main reason why they can't refute me, as was so vividly proven in the hearings last week. If I was wrong, if I was fabricating, if I was lying, making things up, the Department of Homeland Security would have been easily able to discredit me. And Jay Johnson should have been able to say, Mr. Haney, we have proven, A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. Here are the points where he was untruthful. We have looked into it, and we have proven irrefutably that he's not a credible witness. But that's not what he said. What he did say is we haven't even taken the time to look into it. The reason why, from an insider's perspective, is they know I'm right. And to look into it would require them to admit that there's a problem. So from their perspective, their equation, it's a lower risk just to ignore it than it is to simply address it. Because when they address it, once again, then comes the question of accountability. Who is going to be responsible for this? And what Jay Johnson may not have realized that he did when he had that dismissive, arrogant answer is that he just put people who actually did make these decisions, he made their world a lot smaller on Thursday. Because one day, tomorrow, next week, next month, someday, someone's going to have to finally answer the question, why did you delete those records? And by answering in a respectful, professional way, Jay Johnson could have simply said to Senator Cruz, yes, I recognize this is an important concern, and I'll look into it, and I'll get right back to you. That's all he would have had to say, but he didn't. And now he's put that whole situation in even higher profile than it was before. And eventually, if Ted Cruz has anything to do with it, there will be somebody who will finally stand up and answer the question, why record? That's what I'm waiting for.
I hope you're right. And as I said earlier, I'm thrilled that Cruz is still in the Senate and able to do this. We need someone who will be a bulldog on behalf of the American people. I want to touch on one of the hypocrisies with this administration, because you bring up that they don't want to, because someone may be affiliated with a terrorist organization doesn't mean they're a terrorist. We understand guilty or innocent until proven guilty. We get that in this nation. But we don't see that from this very administration. When the individual goes into the church and shoots 9 people in worship, and because there happened to be a Confederate flag on his Facebook page somewhere, the hue and the cry is to dismiss the Confederate flag. And even as much as in the recent news, there was a huge issue because a Confederate flag showed up at some parade in some city somewhere.
Well, it shows you the power of narrative, the power of the meaning of words. It also shows you that as Americans, we're perfectly capable of taking action.
Phil, I'm losing you a little bit. I don't know if it's where you're driving, but I'm losing you a little bit.
Okay, wait a second. I see why.
Ah, there you are.
Sorry. I said that issue with the Confederate flag is the litmus test. It's an indicator. We're Americans. We're perfectly capable of taking action, resounding action, if we choose to do it. You see the power of the narrative and the power of words. When the word got out on the street that Confederate flag symbol was going to be banned and it was a toxic symbol, the whole country turned, didn't they? Very quickly. So it shows you that we're capable of responding and changing if we want to. But apparently the administration up to this point has not had the resolve to address the threat of jihad attacks and implementation of Sharia law in anywhere near the same level of urgency. Their actions betray that. They haven't done it.
And instead they turn us on each other. They're turning neighbors upon neighbors. I remember early on this administration, they had a website. If your neighbor said something untrue about Obamacare, you were to call the White House, email the White House, and let them know so they could help correct it. This is the danger of government turning neighbors upon neighbors, turning them as enemies upon themselves. We've got to go to another break here shortly. Goose, I'm watching you for the deadline on the break. But we're talking with Phil Haney. Folks, see something, say nothing. DHS, Department of Homeland Security, he was there from the beginning and can tell you the history throughout. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Northern Lights Pizza's amazing garlic butter makes amazing breadsticks. Now available in 12-ounce bottles at Northern Lights, Hy-Vee, and Graziano's.
I'm Brian Leach, owner of Service Legends, and my position is Chief Talent Officer.
I'm Nicholas Wonderscheid.
I am Bernie Hobbs,
And I'm the Service Manager.
Marketing Director and Client Relations Manager.
Good morning. The music's
Everything
30
that
seconds.
we do is about ensuring that we exceed your expectations.
I'll try.
Our clients are important to us. 100% satisfaction.
Okay.
We're not just focused on heating and cooling. That's the easiest part of our job, actually, is fixing furnaces and air conditioners.
Everyone that we come in touch with, we want to improve lives.
Bottom line is, we've got our installation guarantees, 25% energy savings guarantee, comfort guarantee, temperature selection guarantee, property protection guarantee.
100% satisfaction guaranteed. Fixed raters free.
All of those guarantees are backed up with a 100% money-back guarantee to hold ourselves accountable to making sure that you get what you're after.
Just fixing the problem today. If they have another problem 5 days down the road, it's still fixed right or it's free.
We use what's called straightforward pricing. Our technicians are going to give you an exact to-the-penny price on what it's going to take before they move forward with any repair. That way you know what to expect.
It's the same price every day.
No surprises.
If you get off work at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you come home, you realize that, oh, my furnace is broken. Now you need to call somebody out that night. You shouldn't have to pay more for that.
We're guaranteeing service 24/7.
We run afternoons, evenings, nights, weekends. We're staffed to work that.
Phone rings at 3 in the morning. You'll get one of our representatives answering the phone every time.
We're not sending you out to Timbuktu in some call center. It's our Service Legend team members, our mission control team.
I'll take a call anytime.
And then they answer the phones the same way during the day as they do at night.
It's a great day at your service company. How can we make you smile?
That's the only way to provide true 24-hour service.
When you're able to let somebody actually live in their home safely when they weren't able to do that before, where they don't have to stay up at night and worry about, is the heat going to come back on? Are we going to freeze the pipes? Is the baby in the room next door going to be sick because they got too cold? When you're able to help somebody overcome challenges like that, that's impacting a life. That makes a difference. I get goosebumps.
You are listening to Truth for Our Time. Our guest is Philip Haney. Phil Haney, Haney. The book is called See Something, Say Nothing. Phil is making himself available. He's traveling the state of Iowa in August, and he will be, we think, I don't know if it's firmed up for sure or not, but we think he'll be at the Cass Terrace with the ACT, America Coming Together group there with Dr. Stephen Kirby, who's also a guest on this show often. That's August 9th. We also think he may be in Orange City the 8th, possibly August 13th he'll be in Ottumwa. So these are tentative, but you can email dsmact@q.com, dsmact@q.com, and Dr. Stephen Kirby will give you more information as he gets it in. And Phil Haney, how can people get a hold of you if they want to invite you to their state to come speak?
Well, you can go through the ACT chapter because I formed an alliance with them. I consider ACT as the Tea Party of the counter-jihad movement, and I'm basically going to be merging in with their lane of traffic, so to speak, as I go on this journey between now and November. So contact ACT. You can contact, the national chapter. They have my contact information, and they'll distribute it out from there as they see fit.
Okay.
But that's how it'll work. I'm in a liaison relationship with them, and we'll be doing this for the next few months.
All right, and I'm very thankful that you are. You said, before we went to the break, you were challenging and encouraging us as Americans, and I think you're absolutely right. If we will activate ourselves, if we will quit listening and acting as pawns and sheep to what those in media would have us to believe and start doing a little research for ourselves and standing up, we can change the narrative. We can ourselves force government to take an action. And I keep saying this. I keep hearing, we won't do this until whatever party has majority in the House or the Senate. And my thought, are people out there not? Every elected official wants to be reelected if they feel like what they're doing is the right thing and they're on a mission with a purpose, whether they're liberal or conservative. And so if our folks will make their hearts known, we saw this with the Target bathroom issue, the transgender issue. People quit going to Target. Target has faced a loss since that time because you could be beat up in the workplace. You can be, as Phil was, you could have, harassment and questions on your work record. Your kids in school can be disciplined for saying what they believe to be true, but you can't at this point force someone to spend their dollar. And so when Americans are given the option, they're doing the right things. They're choosing what their heart knows. And Phil, what you're saying is if we quit doing it in private and start doing it publicly and standing up together against those who have proven themselves, I won't say enemies of this nation, but certainly no longer caretakers of this nation and Constitution.
Well, let's look at it from a biblical perspective first. We have the Holy Spirit. One of the administrations of the Holy Spirit is for us to be led and guided into all truth and to see things to come. Why would the Lord show us things to come unless He wanted us to respond to it? But then we come to the point of how to respond. Well, we need to respond with wisdom and knowledge and understanding from a biblical perspective. The Bible, we all know about the verse that says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge," or lack of wisdom. In modern language, that means my people perish because of ignorance. Paul said in his famous speech on Mars Hill, or sermon, that in times past, God winked at this ignorance, but now he commands men everywhere to repent. So remaining in a constant state of not knowing, of ignorance, is not authorized. We're not permitted to do that from a biblical perspective. So start studying, become a good apologist. There are three things about Islam that, if from a Christian or a biblical perspective, we all need to know about. First of all, the Quran teaches that Jesus was not crucified. The second one is the Quran teaches that to say that he's the Son of God is blasphemy. The third one is to say it teaches that Muhammad is the comforter, the paraclete that was foretold by Jesus would come and walk beside us when he went into heaven. That is about as close to pure blasphemy as anything I know of. Those three things alone should give you the armor to stand and discuss Islam without being afraid. Arm yourself with wisdom. And then the other thing from a more secular perspective is become more familiar with the principles of the Constitution. Because if you stand on the Constitution, it's a solid foundation. No one can accuse you of being an Islamophobe, a racist, or a bigot if what you're talking about is the Constitution. They might try, but it won't stick. So those are weapons of warfare. We're called to war. We're supposed to wear the armor of God. We're not given these tools for nothing. It's obvious that we're in a spiritual warfare, and we need to recognize that and address it. And we have the gifts to do it. We have the grace to do it. We have the Holy Spirit to do it. And we have sound minds and ability to reason and comprehend facts and information. Combine all those together, and you'll become immovable, a solid rock that nothing can move. That's how I see it.
Phil Haney is my guest, and I hate to even interrupt here because you're on a roll, and I want you to continue. These are powerful words. We have maybe just 3 minutes left. You have been on the Hannity Show, 1,000 calls coming in per minute, 4 different lines, 1,000 calls. People are hungry for what you have to say, Phil. You're one of the few that we feel like we can trust right now. How would you have us pray for our government, I guess, or what can we do when we say you get informed? What can we do? What sources could we go to get informed on what's taking place right now in politics?
Well, at the very least, start with the book, get a copy and read it, share it on your social media so that other people in your media world are aware of it. Post a commentary or a review on Amazon or one of the websites. And most important, either write a letter to your House and or Senate member or call them.
Right.
Because a letter is better, as you probably know this, but even a phone call is a whole lot better than nothing. And those 4 little steps that I just outlined are part of what I'm calling a grassroots campaign. If everybody across the country gets energized and does this, you're going to see a change. You're going to see a difference. You will. Because people feel helpless and hopeless. But we're not helpless and we're not hopeless.
Okay.
We have a window of opportunity here. It's best to stand up and take advantage of it.
And I don't want
to...
Go ahead.
No guarantee of outcome, of course. However, if you stand up and do all you can, at least you're not going to have to deal with the guilt or the remorse that you really didn't do all you could do if things don't turn out the way we hope they will. It's your responsibility to do all that you can do. No more, no less. Just all you can do. Each one of us can do that.
And if nothing else, talking to your sphere of influence, your friends, your family, your congregational members, that helps. But it's not just being angry, folks, and it's not just being cynical. There's so much cynicism on social media right now, and I just have to remind my friends that you become a clanging cymbal after a while. You still have to walk in love, but you can tell the truth and stand up in love. And Phil, I don't want to make this political, but we have hope, and I think we can turn this back around politically as well. It's spiritual. It's a spiritual battle. But in our political realm, we have hope, and I think we can turn this around. Do you have that same faith?
Absolutely. I don't give myself permission to be cynical or frustrated. I can't. I couldn't survive. I couldn't function. Besides that, the Bible doesn't authorize us to do it. We're given the Holy Spirit to be bold and in the midst of the darkness. This is our finest hour. This is when what you really believe comes to the fore. It's time to find out what do you really believe and then stand up for it, regardless of what appear to be possible negative consequences. I don't mean be foolish. I mean just the opposite.
All right.
But don't be afraid either.
We're out of time, folks. You've heard it. Phil Haney, See Something, Say Nothing. Get the book. You've been given great information. Be encouraged and don't be complacent.